call the meeting to order. The town of Ladysmith acknowledges with gratitude that this meeting takes place on the traditional territory of the Stewmannis First Nation. Members of the public may attend the meetings in person at the Senior Center or view the live stream. I'd like to approve the agenda. We have someone to move that. Seconded. Okay. We'll now proceed to the public hearing. Oh, sorry. Call the question. Okay. Duck, you gonna vote?
There was a late agenda item, just so the public knows. It was circulated to you. It's also available here, and it was on the
Okay.
website as well. So it's just as amended. But
okay. Thank you. Okay. Carry on. Move to the public hearing. A motion?
I don't think
We don't need one to start the public? Okay. So this public hearing is convened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act to allow the public to make representations to council regarding Bylaw 2205. Anyone present will have a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that the remarks be restricted to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Members of council may ask questions following the presentations. However, the function of council at the public hearing is to listen rather than debate the merits of the proposed bylaw. Once everyone has had an opportunity to speak, those who wish to speak again may do so. Once the public hearing is closed, no further submissions or comments from the public can be accepted by members of council. Logistics: any written submissions received prior to noon deadline today have been added to the council meeting agenda. Any written submissions received between noon and the close of the public hearing will be read into the public record. Please be advised that the public hearing will be recorded and live streamed, so your name, address, and comments will become part of the public hearing record. When speaking, please begin by clearly stating your name and address. I will now ask the Director of Development Services to introduce the proposed bylaw.
Thank you. Officially meeting plan bylaw 2022, number 2200, amendment bylaw 2025, number 2205 is the subject of this public hearing. If approved, bylaw 2205 will amend the OCP to add a policy for considering applications to rezone residential properties to allow short-term rentals and add guidelines for considering temporary use permits to allow short-term rentals where not permitted under the zoning. Notice of this public hearing was printed in the Ladysmith Chronicle on Thursday, April 10th, 2025, and posted on the town's website and community notice boards. A copy of the notice, the proposed bylaw, and background information were available at the front counter of City Hall and Development Services and were available on the town's website for the notice period. Staff in the Development Services office were available to respond to questions prior to the public hearing. As of noon today, the town has received 2 written submissions relating to the proposed bylaw.
We'll now open the floor to public submissions.
Scratch that one.
Pardon?
It's okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to ask the applicant to make the first submission. No applicant here. Are there any more submissions for bylaw 2205? For the second time, are there any submissions for bylaw 2205? For a third and final time, are there any more submissions for bylaw 2205? Are there any written submissions to be read into the public record?
yes, Madam Chair, there is one follow-up from Christine Mathers, who had already previously sent in a submission that was provided in the late agenda item. And her email says, Following my earlier submission regarding bylaw 2205, I would like to clarify. Upon reviewing the current official community plan, OCP bylaw 2022, number 2200, I note that policy 3.14 already exists and states, quote, monitor the impact of short-term rental accommodation on long-term rental housing supply. Consider the short-term rental recommendations of CBRD's Workforce Housing Strategy 2022 once complete, end of quote. And she continues, this appears to result in either a duplication or replacement of the existing 3.14. If intentional, it is not clearly indicated as such in the bylaw. If unintentional, it introduces potential confusion into the OCP, particularly regarding the town's strategic posture on short-term rentals, monitoring versus active permitting. I encourage council and staff to clarify this policy overlap and ensure that amendments to the OCP are both coherent and accurately integrated into the existing framework.
Thank you. Oh,
You have to
Close.
draw
okay.
closure.
Okay. Close public hearing. Thank you. Public hearing for bylaw 2205 is now closed. No further input or submissions can be provided to council. This bylaw is on tonight's council meeting agenda for further consideration. Okay.
Chair, I guess a question for staff.
Through the chair, we just have to get to that part before you start questioning. Thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to bylaws, official community plan and zoning, the subject of the public hearing, the official community plan bylaw 2022, number 2200, amendment bylaw 2025, number 2205. The recommendation that council give third reading and adopt official community plan bylaw 2022, number 2200, amendment bylaw 2025, number 2205.
Thank you, Chair. A question for
Sorry, there has to be a mover and a seconder to have it on
I
the
thought you
floor.
were moving it. Okay, and seconded. Okay, discussion?
my turn.
Yes.
Oh, good. Question through the staff in regards to that brief that Ms. Bowman read from Ms. McDonald. Can you explain? She said there's potential conflict or something with the OCP.
Through the chair, we wouldn't classify that as a conflict. Generally, a conflict in a bylaw occurs when one regulation would specifically prevent compliance with another. So if you, for example, had a bylaw that said people must eat bananas, and then you had another rule that said people were prohibited from eating bananas, that would be a conflict. In this case, it refers to monitoring short-term rentals, and staff are not recommending ceasing monitoring short-term rentals because we're actually actively allowing them to occur. So staff actually think it's viable to continue to monitor them. So the second component of policy 3.14 speaks to considering the couch and workforce housing strategy in developing policy. These policies are actually aligned with that strategy. So staff don't see any need to address any actual or perceived conflict between those two clauses because staff don't feel that they actually conflict, that they're actually compatible.
Just actually a point of clarification. I apologize for saying conflict. She used the word confusion, and that's what I meant to. She said it could be confused. So this, what you just said, eliminates all that.
Through the chair, in our view, yes. They're not necessarily inconsistent. I would actually go so far as to say they are consistent. That it actually implements that policy. This actually implements that policy of the OCP and facilitates it.
Thank you.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you. I just will speak in support of the motion. It's well laid out so that it allows us to have the flexibility to allow more temporary use permits if the vacancy rate is high enough, which is the kind of flexibility that we need. And inversely, though, it allows us to make sure that we're not uh, permitting as many temporary use permits if we know that we need the housing, if we know that needs to be addressed. So I think this is a very constructive tool that is absolutely worth giving a shot, keeping in mind that this is our first kind of foray into the short-term rental business as it's used on the platforms and in conjunction with the province's expectations around licensing and that sort of thing. So I think it's a great bylaw. Thank you.
Any other discussion? No? Okay. Call the question. Oh, all those in favor? Okay. Motion carried. Section 5.1, minutes of the regular meeting of council held April 1st, 2025. Recommendation that council approve the minutes of the regular meeting of council held April 1st, 2025. Seconded. Okay. All those in, any discussion? Updates? As carried. Okay. All in favor? Motion carried. And I think we're actually a little bit early.
Through the chair, if you want to continue on to numbers like 7, and we'll just put a pause on
Okay.
that until he
All right.
arrives. Thank you.
Okay. So 7.1 proclamations. It is Safety and Health Week, May 5th to 10th, 2025. And I have proclaimed May 5th to 10th as Safety Health Week in the town of Ladysmith. There is a proclamation that I'm not going to read, but it is available to anybody who would like to take a look at it. So can I have it moved? Oh, I don't have proclamations? Okay, awesome. And go on to reports. 8.1 is the Arts and Heritage Hub building lease rates. The recommendation that council determine a lease rate per square foot for the leasable space within the machine shop building, the Loki shop, and the car shop based on the information presented in the April 15th, 2025 staff report by the Director of Parks, Rec and Culture. And 2, direct the Director of Parks, Rec and Culture to present the determined lease rates and structure to the previous user groups of the machine shop and the current occupants of the Loki and car shops to gauge interest in formalizing lease agreements. Move.
No, I'd like to move that we vote on these separately, please.
Move that we
Vote on them separately, vote on one and then
Oh,
vote on
okay.
2.
Seconded. Anybody? Okay. Any discussion? No. All in favor? Or do you want to discuss?
I don't really see the need to separate them. They're both pretty well the same users, so I'm not in favor of it.
Pardon?
I don't think it can hurt to separate them. I think it's fair enough that we have discussion. We have the time. We can have the discussion and target the topics of both the items if we need to.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Okay, motion carries. Sorry, and a duck was opposed, so, okay. So we will separate them out and do number 1. Move.
Moved. So moved.
Okay. And seconded? Second. Okay. And discussion?
Yeah. You're looking at me, so I'm going to go. Okay.
Yep. You're the first hand up, so.
Thank you to staff for kind of the lease rate comparison. I think that's really helpful. I think this clearly lays out the case for setting up lease agreements and structures just to ensure that the buildings are, that we have kind of a plan for the stewardship of these great buildings. And I note that these, even the machine shop, which will be newly renovated, plus the 20% commercial rate is still coming in at the very bottom of market rate for commercial space in the region. So if we go with the proposed lease rates, which I'm supportive of, I guess, but we're still at the very low end here. So I think that's generally a positive thing for the tenants, certainly. And I appreciate the flexibility there as the discussion goes ahead about recognizing the lease improvements and the maintenance and the other work that's going to be going into those buildings and that actively goes into them. So, yeah, also note that we're starting the discussion. We're not kind of entering the rates now, entering the agreements now. So, happy to support the motion.
Councillor McKay? Oh, I'm sorry.
So I have a question with this as well, but I'm going to be looking at the categories for the rates, the base rate, the nonprofit rate, and the commercial rate, and it's just distinguishing between those types of organizations. And I know that we recently had an example or a situation with a nonprofit but they had lost their nonprofit status because they hadn't refiled, or there had been information lost, and so they weren't actually a nonprofit at that time. What kind of safeguards do we have in place, or checks and balances do we have in place for our own processes to ensure that that is a valid representation for an organization? Because sometimes they don't even know that they don't have the status anymore.
Thank you. Through the chair. Groups would be considered in good standing when they file their reports, their annual reports, and we can look into whether those were filed. So nonprofits would be in good standing if those reports are filed, and then that's how we would gauge it. If profits fall into like non-compliance or not in good standing, we would acknowledge that and look into that and confirm that, and then probably come back to council if we needed to.
So the nonprofit status is issued by another governing body, not us. It's a higher level of government that determines if an organization is a functioning nonprofit organization, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Did you, sorry.
Through the chair, I would just say that if somebody lost their nonprofit, in the case that you were mentioning, our staff did work with them and waited and kind of guided them and helped them get it back. So if that was the case, staff again would work with those nonprofits unless there was a desire by the nonprofit not to maintain that status.
Thank you. Can I have one more follow-up? Okay. Thank you. And we have the base rate, we have the nonprofit and the commercial. What other, like when would the base rate apply? Or is that just the one that we go up or down from? Because I'm trying to imagine what kind of a renter or leasee would be accessing the base rate.
Through the chair, it is the base rate that establishes kind of that increase or decrease. Yeah.
So it's not an actual a level that you would actually lease the property on. It would be, okay.
Yeah, unless, thank you. Yeah, unless they're a nonprofit who have lost their status, then they may refer to the base rate.
I had imaginings of someone moving in with their fridge and stove and carpet. Thank you.
Thank you. One of my questions was, what is the base rate, and what would where and when would it apply?
Well, I just
yeah. Now the per annum. So for a nonprofit, the $5.50 a square foot, that is per year, right? So if somebody wanted to rent wrong sheet. the 690 square foot studio space on the ground floor at 550, it's not, it would be $3,795 a year, not a month.
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
So the 460 would be 2530 a month or a year, right? And then the same for the rate of 330 would be for a year for the other two buildings.
I don't have those calculations in front of me, but yes, you would
Well, I did them while I was bored working at the chamber.
calculate
So.
the square footage of each space, and that
Yep.
would be for the year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Jacobson?
Through to staff, for the leasehold improvements, it says that they're, staff recommended, or sorry, where was it here? Basically, I'm wondering what the, proportion of discount will the leasees get for the improvements or the value of the improvements that they add to the space?
Through the chair, I don't think I fully understand the question, but
I think Aaron understood it.
So I'm totally through the chair. So if an organization is using a part of the building and they're going to be doing landscaping around it and doing other improvements, there would be some negotiation to how that would factor into the lease rate. But we were requesting that be delegated to the Director of Parks, Rec and Culture to determine that.
Just follow up. So there's no sort of predetermined maximum that somebody could say contribute and to dial back their rate entirely, or
we won't be paying them.
well, exactly. But I'm wondering if it would just end up zeroing out or anything like that between that and I noticed in here too that they would be able to apply for PTEs for the space. So is it going to end up at the point where perhaps somebody's there?
The intent was it would be reflective of how much work they're going to be doing. So say if it's a massive area that needs to be landscaped, well, that's only really done once a year to get it to a certain level, and then we'll just do maintenance and that. So that's why it's kind of going to be varying. It probably could be in the first year. It could change, but I would refer to the Director of Parks and Rec and Culture for that.
Through the chair, the intention of that was to put value to the work that's being done around those spaces and to offset some of the.
I can appreciate that. I'm just curious how that value is going to be determined and who's going to be doing that work. Is it going to go to, the leasee to be completing that work, or is it going to be put back onto staff? Like it says that, staff will ensure that the improvements are, I'm imagining that they're just done the way we want them done, but I'm just curious is there any sort of setup for who's going to be doing the work?
Through the chair, it would depend on what those improvements are. If they involve structural improvements or building improvements, such as would need a carpenter, we would want to make sure that they're using a certified carpenter and approving that work. If it's landscaping, then we would look at kind of what the cost or value is to that amount of landscaping if we were to do it in-house and look at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple comments I'd like to make. One thing I am a little bit concerned about is, especially with nonprofits, that we make the lease too onerous, and all it's going to do is take all of their fundraising efforts and turn it into money being paid to the town, which is going to result in a loss of activities and events for the community. And it kind of turns them into town employees where they're just working for us as opposed to working for the community. The other question I was kind of wondering is whether there would ever be any consideration given for maybe cultural and heritage value. For example, we've just had the LMS receive a couple of very prestigious awards from the BC Maritime Museum for work done restoring the Dorothy and the skiff and those have now become part of BC's history. They're being used for ceremonial and celebrational issues. Would there be any consideration going forward to providing, some kind of consideration for that kind of contribution as well?
Through the chair, if council wishes to establish sort of a value to recognize that, we can definitely take a look at that.
Okay.
But again, the intent of this isn't just about the maintenance, but it's to put value to the service that these groups are providing in those spaces.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor? Okay. Okay, motion carried. And we'll move on to the second part. To direct the director to present the determined lease rates and structure to the previous user groups and current occupants of the low-key and car shops to gauge interest in formalizing lease agreements. Motion? Okay. Seconded? Discussion? Councillor Mackay. Sorry, I'll get there. Yes.
So the current occupants of the low-key and car shops to gauge interest in formalizing lease agreements. So it's to initiate the conversation. Once we have the base rates established, then it's to initiate the conversation and see where that goes. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. Yes, that is correct. I should note though that item 1 was to determine the lease rate, so I just would like maybe seeking clarification on whether that was determined, whether the lease rates presented, or are you?
Yeah, through the chair, we'll have to circle back to number 1 just to see what rates council determined you wanted us to use.
Oh, I was
If
assuming
they
they
were the
as
ones in the
stated on
report, then that's fine. We just need confirmation on that.
That's what I voted on.
Yeah, I assumed it was the ones that were stated on the chart. But
thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Jacobson.
Through to staff, which tenants would we be reaching out to? Like what are the names of the groups that are in there?
We would be looking at the Ladysmith Maritime Society, who is our current tenant of the car shop. We would be looking at the Ladysmith District Historical Society, who is our tenant of the car shop. We'd be looking at the Ladysmith and District Arts Council, who was a former tenant in the art gallery and classroom and print shop and that. And we'd be looking at maybe reaching out to the former artists that were displaced through that as well.
Councillor Jacobson.
Just to follow up on that, I will be voting against this motion. I struggle from a taxpayer perspective to offer a discounted rate to a group that has an open lawsuit against the town that the taxpayers are on the hook for as well.
Any other discussion? Nope. Okay. All 4? Oh, sorry. All in favor? Against? Motion carries. Yeah, we'll go back to our delegation. Yeah, I think our delegation is here, so we'll move back to 6.1. MNP auditors for the town, Corey Vanderhorst, will present the 2024 financial statements for the town of Ladysmith. A recommendation that the council accept the 2024 audit findings report and the draft 2024 financial statements as presented by MNP auditors for the town of Ladysmith.
Question. Sorry, question. Shouldn't we wait till he gives his presentation before we accept it?
Or we can vote.
Yeah.
We're not going to vote on it.
No.
We can accept
Okay.
Yeah. So motion.
I'll move it.
Okay, seconded. Okay.
Discussion.
Yeah.
evening. Thank you very much for inviting me here to attend your council meeting tonight. And so I do have a quick slide deck to go through, talk a little bit about your financial statements for 2024, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions about the financial statements or the audit process. Should introduce myself, Corey Vanderhorst with MNP, the audit partner for the town. Get the technology going. Want to go one? Yeah. That'd be awesome. Look at them. Okay. Yes, let's go one forward. Thanks. So I'll talk a little bit about the financial statement highlights, and then a little bit about the audit, our audit findings, and confirm our auditor independence. Next slide, please. So a reminder that when we go through the financial statements here, this is making sure you're staying compliant with the community charter. Financial statements must be prepared by your financial officer, must have an auditor, and then must be reported to council. So we're making sure you stay all up to date on the community charter requirements. I'm going to start with the statement of financial position, or the balance sheet for the town at the end of 2024. So this is a snapshot of what was in the accounts. You can see there the cash and investments have increased to 54.1 million. Your cash investments and your accounts receivable are what we call that total financial asset line of $56.6 million. The debt that's being paid down and serviced throughout the year is at $15.4 million. Debt, accounts payable, and other liabilities that you have to account for, total liabilities of $39.4 million. So if you take that $39 million and subtract it out of the 56, you get what we call the net financial asset position of $17.1 million, and you can see quite an increase there year over year. It was $9.8 million in 2023. Tangible capital assets are on the books at $119 million. So this is the historic cost of the assets that you're managing: road, water, sewer, all that infrastructure, and then we depreciate it over time. And accumulated surplus is $136 million. I'll explain what's in that number in a couple slides. The statement of operations, or the income statement for 2024, here you can see the activities throughout the year for the town. Total revenues of $25.8 million. Down a bit from the prior year. The prior year had some significant contributed assets coming on, and we record those as a revenue. Also down from budget. Budget had some significant capital grants. That's always a timing thing. So you can see there from 47 million in the budget to 25 million in the actual. Expect you'll see that as you go through your budget process as well, again for current year. On the expenses side of things, $21.4 million of expenses. So they are down year over year and under budget, where you had 27.6 million budgeted for expenses. So we have an accounting surplus of $4.4 million. To unwind all the accounting adjustments that we do when we put together financial statements, or actually when your financial officer puts together financial statements, I like to look at the cash flow statement. This is more in line with how you're thinking when you look at your budget, what's actually coming in and going out throughout the year. So the regular operations of the town had a cash inflow of $11.5 million. You can see that's right about the same amount as 2023, so very consistent. Capital purchases and capital spending net of disposal proceeds was $1.6 million. So you can see there a significant decrease in capital activity as the water treatment plant was wrapping up in 23 and less capital in 24. And then paying down the debt on schedule, $864,000 of principal reduction on the debt. So at the end of 2024, there was a net increase in the cash and deposit accounts of $9 million. The accumulated surplus number, $136 million. Most of that is that top line invested in capital assets. So that's not a cash balance. That's the value of the assets minus the debt and depreciated over time. There are $7.4 million set aside in reserves for future projects. The capital funds have a small surplus of $400,000. There's 18.7 in appropriated equity, so also earmarked for future projects and or specific expenses, and then 6.1 million in the unappropriated equity account. So we are happy to be providing what we call an unqualified opinion. That's auditor speak for a clean audit. We are satisfied that the financial statements that I just went through there are prepared accurately in all material respects in accordance with the appropriate public sector accounting standards for local governments. We're ready to sign the report. The last step is Mayor and Council approval here tonight. We have all of our final bits and pieces collected up. When we're going through our audit, so we start by looking at the controls to make sure you're getting accurate financial results. We look at how they're designed, how they're implemented. We don't necessarily test the effectiveness of the controls, and that's an audit efficiency approach. It's a little bit more efficient for us to just look at the year-end transactions. So we sample those transactions to form our audit opinion. We don't look at every transaction. So to get to that sampling and how much we're going to look at, we use that second bullet there of materiality. It's an important number for the audit. So we calculate that as a percentage of your annual revenues. It's about 4 or 5% of your revenues. And then we look at every transaction that's larger than 1.2 million. So that's usually, taxes, large capital, large grants. And then underneath that dollar amount, we sample. And we use that dollar amount to derive how much sampling we're going to do. We didn't find anything unusual this year. That's I have nothing to bring to council. I don't have to ask to go in camera. That's always a good thing. No evidence of conflict of interest or unusual related party transactions. And again, a big thank you to the finance department and staff throughout the town. The audit goes very smoothly and we really appreciate their assistance. I do have to confirm our independence. So we didn't do any other projects for the town that would impair my ability to give you an independent audit opinion. That goes right from January 1st of 2024 all the way through to today, the end of the audit period. And that's everything I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have a question for staff, but I guess a question for yourself as well. Page 47, financial instruments, first paragraph, the town as part of its operations, blah, blah, blah. The second to last sentence, the town is exposed to currency risk on its US dollar bank account. Is it a large bank account? And in today's times and stuff, and all being very proud Canadians, why do we have one?
Thank you. I'll defer to staff.
Thank you. We actually, sorry, the chair, we opened that account up when we were doing the wastewater treatment plant because we did have one supplier from the States and we just moved the monies into that account at that point in time. I think there's about $60,000 we could transfer it in, but we do a few transactions that are in American funds. We can't get away from them, some of the suppliers, and it is more beneficial to use the American account than it is to do a conversion each time.
Just to follow up on that question, have we checked around to see if there is other suppliers other than those particular ones?
Through the chair, I can assure you, just recently we have been looking at all of our suppliers for all that we can do to
okay. Thank
buy
you.
local.
I have one, but
Any other questions? Councilor.
Thank you. Through to whoever expert would like to address it. I'm trying to get clarity on taxation revenue because on page 36 it says taxation revenue is 13,695,000, and then page 61 it says general municipal purposes under tax collected is 8.4 million, and then on the schedule 1 for 2024 revenue tax is 10.39 million. So I thought it was in the around 10. But then the 8 and the 13 kind of threw me off. What's the difference between those numbers?
I can start. And you want to?
You go ahead.
So yeah. So what I apologize. I don't know what number it is in what page number it is in your package. But note 23 for the taxation gives you a good summary there that the $10 million number that you're mentioning, Councilor Worley, is the amount of taxes you're collecting for school, hospital districts, MFA, the regional library. That all totals $10 million.
That makes sense.
So you collect 23 overall for everybody. 10 goes to those other bodies. You're collecting it on their behalf. And then the town's net tax that you have to use is the 13,695,000. And so we are required, we do show the 13 net on the income statement, but we're just showing all the other entities that get a piece of the tax dollar.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. On page 36, revenues down to development fees. 2024 is 59,131. We budgeted 3 million something or other. How come the difference?
Yeah, I can start on that one as well. So those development cost charges are amounts that are parked on the balance sheet for future use, right? As the DCC funding comes in, you will use it later. Only a small amount, 59,000, was used during the year for projects. And so if you had budgeted for other projects that didn't happen, that would be why you're only recognizing that revenue to match the actual project work that happened.
Okay. I'm just stuck on this accounting stuff where you spend it, but it's still classed as revenue. I'm lost.
Through the chair, I can just add a little bit
please.
more clarity. So on that one, I thought we were going to be using more of a DCCs to do some of the big projects of the Holland Dam, the Stocking Dam, and all those kind of things. They haven't moved further along as we had anticipated. So we had budgeted to be taking those out of the DCC reserve, but we didn't spend as much as we had anticipated. So it was only like, so there's a huge discrepancy between what we used and what we had budgeted.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
This is just further to answering Councillor Patterson. The only time it's a problem is if the money spent is greater than the money budgeted. As long as it works the other way around, we're okay.
I just have a question. So the discrepancy between those two numbers, is it still considered that it will be spent further this year or in the next couple of years? Like it's still earmarked?
We had budgeted for some of those projects to continue on. I don't think we're going to spend all of it in 2025, but it will be over the next few years for sure.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. All in favor? Motion carried. Pardon? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your report. Bye-bye. Yeah. Move on to section 8.2, purchase of folding machine. The recommendation that council approve the purchase of a folder inserter machine for up to $20,000 with the funds to come from appropriated equity and amend the 2025 to 2029 financial plan accordingly. Motion, seconded. Oh, okay. Discussion. Yes, sorry. Councillor who was first? Jacobson? Okay. Councillor Mackay?
Thank you. So I guess this is one of those things where we have to spend a lot more money up front, but then over time it pays for itself. Is that, that's what we're thinking here? And about how many years will it be before we break even on this? Assuming things stay the same in terms of the usage. Obviously, if we're taking advantage of it more, which hopefully we would, it would be paid for itself more quickly. So just putting that question out there.
Through the chair, I anticipate including the maintenance costs and the servicing about 5 years to be a payback on that machine.
Thank you.
Councillor Jacobson?
Through to staff, how much is the uptake of receiving, like people receiving their bills by email or online? Like, is that increasing year over year, or because that's free?
So this is just a machine to continue doing the process we have to print the actual the physical bills. We do not have the ability to do the property tax notices electronically yet. I'd love to. That might be a future budget request, but we don't have that ability, and it is different from our utility bills because there's actually specific legislation around the tax notices. Last time we did offer the homeowner grant through the municipalities, so this is pre-COVID, we only had 26% of people using the electronic version of that. So I'm not sure the numbers are there. They might be there now, but to spend the money to go electronic, it's a different pathway that we'd be going. So this would just be status quo, paper copy, inserts, letters, mailing, all that kind of stuff.
Councillor Mackay?
Is it fair to say that there's a time efficiency doing it this way as opposed to shipping it off to another location? Is that part of why we want it?
Through the chair, yes. So what happens is we're with other municipalities asking for a folding company, mailing company to be doing the work. So all of us are lining up. We had to pick a date in the future as to what that date we're going to have all our stuff ready. With the looming or pending potential Canada Post disruption, I wanted to now move it earlier, and we couldn't. We could not change our date. We're stuck with that date. So if we're not ready for that date, we're still paying for a reservation, and we don't have another time to be doing it. So this would allow us to move this in-house. Don't know where we'll put the item in City Hall, but we will be doing it in-house, and then we will not be at the mercy of another company to have a reservation in the future.
I have a question. This is strictly a machine that takes papers that you've printed and folds them and assembles them, correct?
Correct. It folds it and inserts it into an envelope.
Could we sell the services to some other communities like Chemainus and Lake Cowichan? I mean, it's going to be sitting there not doing anything for a lot of
possibility. We could put that out there. I do know Duncan has their own machine. When the problem that we would have is it would be correlated to just what our job will be. So what our thickness of our paper, our envelopes, all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't want somebody else monkeying with that type of setup to be selling that service, as well as you got factoring the staff time and all that kind of stuff. Like there is another option for the other municipalities to use. Like
I was just thinking of recouping some of our costs.
We definitely could look at that.
Okay, thank you. Any other further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Motion carried. (8.3) The UBCM Next Generation 911 Grant. The recommendation that Council support the town's application to the UBCM Local Government Program Services Next Generation 911 NG 911 grant for the purchase and installation of NG 911 compatible mobile computer aided dispatch agents in fire department vehicles. 2, confirm its willingness to provide overall grant management subject to receipt of grant funding. And 3, if the grant funding is successful, amend the 2025-2029 financial plan accordingly. Okay. Seconded. Okay. Discussion? Mm-hmm. No? All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Takes us to bylaws. Bylaws for introduction. 9.1.1 2025 property tax bylaws, property tax rates bylaws 2025, number 2209, sewer parcel tax bylaw 2025, number 2210, and water parcel tax bylaw 2025, number 2211. Recommendation that council give first, second, and third readings to property tax rates bylaw 2025, number 2209, sewer parcel tax bylaw 2025, number 2210, and water tax bylaw 2025, number 2211. Councillor Jacobson, and seconded. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? And motion carries. Bylaws for adoption, 9.2.1, dog licensing control and pound bylaw, 1995, number 1155, amendment bylaw 2025, number 2207. Recommendation that council adopt dog licensing control and pound bylaw 1995, number 1155, amendment bylaw 2025, number 2207. Seconded. Okay. That's, yeah. And discussion? All in favor? And motion carries. And the bylaw status sheet is attached. Call for new business. Any new business? No? Oh, sorry, unfinished business. 11.1, motion to rescind resolution CS 2025-089. On April 8th, 2025, Councillor Gurley provided corporate officer with a written notice of motion to rescind the following resolution passed at the April 1st, 2025 regular council meeting. CS 2025-089. That council directs staff to consult with the mayor and or council if an operational decision will adversely affect a community group or partner. Recommendation that council rescind resolution CS 2025-089. The council directs staff to consult with the mayor and or council if an operational decision will adversely affect a community group or partner. Motion, second. Okay, discussion. Councillor Gurley.
Thank you, Mayor. I last time when we voted on this, it was after a verbal introduction of the motion and a brief discussion. And I realized that at least for myself, I need to take longer to consider some of these matters, either in advance or before a vote, because I quickly after this discussion and vote became aware of some of the unintended consequences of this. One pertains to the language around community group or partner, and it's very vague. My concern is that it really encumbers our staff to second guess every decision they operationally make with anyone from is a developer, a resident, a tenant, school, other nonprofit, RCMP, who is a community partner, and how and on what basis do we decide if they're adversely affected? The other concern I have with the resolution is the matter of operational decisions. And we're here at this table to provide good governance, not operational decision making. Sometimes they get close. I think our discussion earlier tonight was an example of that. Lease rates. What do we feel is a fair lease rate for but all of these the process is strong. I think today was an example of the strong process. We decide how we want to empower our staff to go through decision-making process. They go through the process, and then they come back and then we vote on the decisions, and then we own the decisions, and then we have to advocate for our decision-making process with the public. And regarding the public, we already have many strong means of seeking feedback and input and receiving complaints and comments, including by phone. We each have public cell phones, by email, which is used all the time, by coming to a council meeting and posing a question on a related item, by coming to a council meeting as a delegation, by presenting a petition, by seeking one-on-one meetings with any of us. And these mechanisms are used by various community groups and community partners when they need clarity, when we need more information, when we feel others could use more information. It's a reciprocal thing that is healthy and flourishing, and there's room for growth. And I would be fully supportive of entertaining more methods for growth. And I commend our mayor for starting the Thursday afternoon council corner and just providing yet more opportunities for the public to provide input, to ask questions and whatnot. I think that's really good. But this resolution, I think, puts us out of our zone of what we are supposed to be doing, and it puts staff in a very awkward position. So that's why I brought it back for reconsideration.
Any further discussion? Okay, Councillor Mackay.
I agree. It was my point of view from the start. I voted against this when it was passed. And for those reasons, for the fact that it is overstepping our mandate, which is governance and those decisions. We can always have conversation. There's lots of opportunities. When an agenda comes out, we can read the agenda. If we have questions or concerns over an item, we have lots of different places we can go to for discussion. And because the agenda is made public virtually at the same time that we receive it, concerns from the public can come to us, and they do, and get addressed. So I think it is too open, too vague, and like you said, how do we define what a partner group is or a community group? Where do the lines stop and start? And we don't want to cripple anyone in the process. So I think if we have issues or concerns with some of the processes, then we need to work on them in another way, not make a blanket dictation on how it has to change. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Speaking against it, I understand a little bit where other members of council are coming from, but I don't see this as a big overpowering burden to staff. It's a common sense. It's an awareness to everybody. You know, our job isn't just governance. Our job is to look after the shareholders in the corporation, which is the citizens. They don't elect staff, and when there's an issue, most of the time they don't go to staff. They come to us and expect us to fix it. There's always two sides to every story, but this past year especially, I really feel that there has been a distance between the corporation and the shareholders. And I would like to, and I can go back in my history and say how we used to do this and used to do that. Not that we're doing anything wrong, but I don't think that we're paying enough attention to groups, organizations, partners, as we should be. And if what it says here is to consult. It doesn't say anything about changing rules or saying, okay, you can do this or no, you can't. It's just consult. So if there is an issue, staff can consult with council or the mayor. We can consult with the interested parties. But to me, it was an awareness that we're not where we used to be. And it's kind of disappointing in a way. We've grown. We've got a lot more to do. We've got a lot more rules. It's nothing against staff. We have good staff. It's just the feeling at times, I guess, and I had a discussion with staff, and it was mentioned that, the council is us, and it's our meeting and stuff. No, it's all of us together around this table and further, because we're the ones that are holding this whole thing together and trying to make it grow in the right way. So as far as this, I don't see places like Vancouver. They get involved in housing and all that stuff, so they're doing more than governance. So I totally disagree with we just do governance. we're looking after the stockholders, and we need to work with them. Whether it works for them or not has to come through deliberation. So this might not be perfect, but it gives us an opportunity to try it and see. I don't think it's going to be a burden whatsoever. Thank you.
Councillor Jacobson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to Councillor Gourlay for bringing this back to the table. I appreciate it. I voted against the initial motion, and I will be voting in favor to rescind it for all of the reasons mentioned. And I just wanted to say thank you for bringing it back. I know it's kind of not always easy to kind of rethink things after the fact. So thank you for bringing it back, Councillor Gourlay. To Duck's point about opportunities to talk to us, like I don't, Councillor Gourlay listed out quite a few. Like I think all of us are accessible, and I do feel like we give staff direction. And by going in and backtracking and asking them to come back and consult with us after the fact, it like that doesn't really make any sense. It seems like a lot of backtracking and getting in their way as well and preventing them from doing the job that we've asked them to do. So I will be voting in favor again to rescind this motion.
I just have, oh, sorry, Councillor McKay. Okay. I just wondered if it would make a difference that if the wording were that council directs staff to inform the mayor or council as opposed to consult with, just to more of a heads up than an actual opening a conversation.
So you may be right, and that could certainly further resolutions could bounce around other ideas, but I am aware that this cannot be amended throughout this process. We're voting on the original resolution.
Councillor McKay?
So I would suggest then that if there is a problem, that we come up with a better mechanism for addressing it. I think we've mentioned lots of different opportunities, lots of different ways for groups or people or individuals to share concerns, and they do. I talk with people all the time. Our Mayor Beeston is out visiting with different groups all the time. There's all kinds of opportunities to have those conversations. I don't want to be in a position where I have to pick one group over another. I want there to be laid out facts as to where things go and how systems have to work, so that I'm not picking favorites. I don't want to be in a position where I'm having to pick one group over another because I like somebody in that group, or because I enjoy the arts, or because I'm a history buff. I don't want to be in those positions. I want it to be a little bit more clinical on how we make our decisions. And not to say that we don't care about the people behind them. We absolutely do. That's why we're here. That's our mandate. It is to represent the people who voted us into the chairs. But I'm not. I think this motion was made with other alternatives, perhaps, and it was made on the fly. And I'm not at all sure that it is a reasonable. It's not well written. It's not written in a way that can be executed with any degree of ease. I think if we can't see the black and the white of what it is exactly being talked about in terms of groups, how do we expect the staff to? And they're going to err on the side of making sure we get everything. And we find that information out. It's not like things go on in the background without us knowing. They come to us at the table. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And that takes us to question period. A maximum of 15 minutes allotted for questions. Persons wishing to address council during question period must be town of Ladysmith residents, non-resident property owners, or operators of a business. Please state your name and address for identification purposes. Please put your questions forth, must be related to items on the agenda, be brief and to the point, addressed through the chair, and answers will be given likewise. Debates with or by individual council members or staff members are not allowed, and no commitments shall be made by the chair in replying to a question. Matters which may require action of the council will be referred to a future meeting of council.
Robert Johnson, 526 First Avenue. Just a question for clarification on the financial statements. On page 37 near the bottom of the page, it says short-term deposits, $9 million. But on page 46, it shows short-term deposits at 915,000. And can somebody explain it to me? Because I don't understand.
Anybody open to take that question? Okay, okay. I will have to refer that because
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other question in regards to the property taxes, do you have a form in there that shows the assessed value of a residential house at 771,000, the calculation of what the taxes are? Then they show a small business, and the small business is assessed at 335,000. I'm amazed that that figure is so low, because if you own a business on First Avenue, you're talking a minimum of $500,000 to $750,000. So I'm just wondering, where did that 331,000 come from? Does it truly reflect our business community? And in addition, when you look at the taxes that are paid on municipal basis, the small business is paying 3.3 times as much as the residential is. Then the last question I have, again for clarification, is when you were talking about the lease rates for the machine shop or blue building, the car shed and the Loki's, does it mean, using the figures that you passed tonight, $550 a square foot, that organizations like the Maritime Society will be looking at $20,000, and the people who are using the boat shed.
That's an annual.
Yeah, I know.
So if the car shop was
What,
3,000 square feet.
Yeah, my point is that when you're looking at the Ladysmith Maritime Society, or who are the primary users of the car shop, the Loki shop, and that, they're looking at $20,000. And is there any financial support that you may be able to give them? Because with their fundraising, that would be a real burden on them. Thank you.
Thank you. The financial questions, I will have to refer back to staff and get an answer for you, because I'm not as familiar with the documents. As far as the Maritime Society, for the car shop, there is further discussion on possible works that they may be able to do that will help to offset the rent, maintenance, and improvements. And that's something that can be discussed, as well as the PTE is something else that can be taken into consideration. So, okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Call for adjournment. Motion seconded. All in favor? Okay.
Anybody on council interested in going in the golf tournament? June 13th.